morning. I hope everyone is having a fantastic week of work. Okay, picture this. It is the AFC Championship in the NFL playoffs. Your team is in the game, and you are this close to making it to the Super Bowl. It's been a tight game. The energy is at an all-time high, and there's only 15 seconds left in the game. And then that 15 seconds turns into 10 seconds. That 10 seconds turns into 5 seconds. That 5 seconds turns into the game is over. You're so excited. You look at the score to see who won and wait a minute. There's no score. No one kept track of who was winning the game. Okay, we know this would never happen in the NFL, especially in the playoffs. But the main question I want to ask you is this. Who is keeping score of your marketing campaigns? When you are spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on a marketing campaign to help promote your business, how are you keeping score? What determines if your campaign was a loser or what determines if your campaign was a winner? How are you going to determine the performance of that campaign? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. And it is the very last video in your campaign development series, all right? And what we're going to focus on is a term that's called a key performance indicator or a KPI, all right? Key performance indicator or a KPI. Now, this might sound like a very complicated business term, but it's very simplistic when you think about it. Key performance indicator. So what are the key indicators? What indicators are you going to use to determine the performance of your campaign? All right. So that's what we're talking about in this video. And pretty much what we're talking about is what metrics will be determined if your campaign is successful or not. What metrics are you going to use to determine if your campaign is successful or not? Okay. We got two phrases and two words here. I have key performance indicator and I have metrics. What exactly is the difference between the two? What exactly are they? All right. I'm going to start with metrics first. A metric is a form of measurement. A metric is a form of measurement. To give you an example, if you are trying to measure distance, what units will you use? What metrics will you use in order to measure distance? Well, you could use yards, you could use feet, you could use inches, you could use miles, you could use kilometers, right? These are all metrics of distance. Let's say you want to measure time. What metrics, what indicators will you use to measure time? Well, you could use seconds, you could use minutes, you could use hours, you could use days, you could use months, years. That is what a metric is. So a metric is a form of measurement. Now, metrics are precise. You know exactly how long an hour is. There's no disputing that. An hour is 60 minutes. That's the way it is. It's not changing. It is a definitive measurement, right? Let's say you want to measure, okay, who's the best football player in the world? That is an opinion. Now, yeah, you could use metrics such as yards after catch, number of touchdowns, number of receptions. You can use a number of metrics in determining that, but who the overall best player is in the entire NFL this year, that's an opinion, all right? So a metric is not an opinion. It is not intangible. It is a finite, tangible element. Days can be measured undisputably. Hours can be measured undisputably, all right? So that's what we're talking about as a metric. So if we know that metrics are units of measurement, then what in the world is a key performance indicator, all right? What the difference is there are so many metrics that you can use to measure the success of your campaign. But what are those key? What are those main? What are the most important metrics? What are the most important measurements that will determine if your campaign was a success or if it was a failure? All right. So that's the difference between a KPI and a metric. A metric is a form of measurement. Any form of measurement has to be finite, has to be definitive. The key performance indicator, your KPIs, especially of a campaign, Those are the key metrics. Those are the main metrics. Those are the determining metrics to determine if you were a success or not. Let me give you an example. In a football game, you have metrics such as total yards, total passes, total completions, total sacks. Those are all metrics. But when the game is over and it's all said and done, what is the key performance indicator? That is the total score. That is the metric that supersedes everything else. You could have the most amount of yards. You could have the most amount of sacks. You could have the most amount of receptions. But at the end of the day, if the score is not in your favor, you lost the game. All right? So that's the difference between a metric, a form of measurement, and a key performance indicator. What are the main metrics that determines success? Okay? Now, here's another important point. The metrics that you select in your campaign are directly correlated with the goal of your campaign. If you remember, in the define stage, you had to establish a goal. Is your campaign focused on gaining sales? Is it focused on gaining awareness? Is it an educational campaign? Are you looking to get leads? What is the main goal of your campaign? What is the main focus? Your KPIs have to be a direct measure of that goal. Let me give you an example. Sales. Let's say the goal of your campaign is to increase sales. So what are your KPIs? There are a ton of different metrics that you could use for your campaign. But what are the most important? It could be units sold. It could be the total dollars that were sold that came in. It could be number of units per sale. It could be dollars per transaction. Right? These are all key metrics that help you determine, did this campaign bring in extra sales? All right, now let's look at the next one, awareness. Now, we already talked about these are two completely different types of campaigns. A sales campaign is going to be completely different than an awareness campaign. The question is what is most important for your objective? What are you trying to achieve? So if you're trying to create an awareness campaign, well, we're not necessarily, we're hoping that sales come in down the road, but we're not gearing everything towards sales. If we're trying to do an awareness campaign, we want brand awareness. We want people exposed to our brand. What are the key performance indicators? Well, it could be views. How many people viewed my YouTube video? How many people viewed my TV video? How many people viewed my streaming commercial? It could also be impressions. How many people saw my social media ad? How many times was my social media ad presented to different individuals? It could be radio listens. How many people listened to my ad? It could be frequency, impressions on a podcast advertisement. How many times did my podcast ad, how many times was my podcast ad heard? All right? So you can see in these two examples, when you're deciding your KPI, what you do is you look at the goal of your campaign and you try to ask yourself, okay, what are the key measurements? What are the key metrics that will determine if this campaign is successful or not? Let's say you're doing a social media campaign, all right? Maybe some of your key performance indicators are a number of likes, number of comments, number of shares, engagement rates. Maybe if you're trying to increase followers, your key performance indicator is the number of followers or percentage of increase of followers, all right? Now, I also want you to understand that when you're deciding your KPIs, they do not have to be exorbitant. It's up to you. What measures do you need in order to determine if this campaign was a success or not? All right, let's use another example. Leads. It could be as simple as number of leads that came in. That simple. You do not have to overcomplicate this process, all right? So these are just some examples of a KPI. Now, what is your task? What are you supposed to do in this stage, all right? So number one, what you have to do is you have to select your KPIs. You have to select your KPIs, right? How will you measure the success of this campaign? What will determine how successful this campaign is? What are those key metrics that you need to decide on that will tell what are those key metrics that will tell you if this campaign was successful or not. Write them down. All right. Next, what metrics are most important to you? What metrics are most important to you? And then finally, it has to be a direct measurement of your goal. Now, what if you say, hey, listen, you know what? I want to do an awareness campaign, but what's important to me more than anything is sales. This is a fantastic built-in red flag for you. If sales is the most important indicator for your campaign, then you shouldn't be doing an awareness campaign. You should be doing a sales campaign. And you need to be mindful of that right off the bat. All right? So the type of KPIs that you use should be a direct measure of what your goal is. They should be perfectly aligned. If they're not aligned, then you need to adjust your campaign before you launch it. Okay? All right. So that is it for this video. KPIs is really simple. It is simple, but it's so funny because you'd be surprised how many people actually do not use it and do not define it before the campaign actually goes into launch. All right. So just remember these different items, right? How will you measure the success of your campaign? What metrics are most important to you? And you're going to make sure that these are aligned with the goal of the campaign so everything is in sync, right? Make sure you have your business scorecard. Make sure you have your campaign scorecard. When the game is over, when the campaign is over, now you can look at your key performance indicators to see if you actually won the game or if you lost the game, you need to go back to the drawing board. All right, guys. Bible verse of the day. This is a good one. We've been using this a couple of times in the past. Philippians 4:19-20. And my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Now to our God and Father be glory forever and ever. Amen. My prayer for you guys is that God will supply you and your business and your family and your friends with everything that you need this week. Have a good one. We will see you in the next video. See you soon.